Well, I'm so glad to be joined today by Brian Shea. Brian is the Vice President of Commercial Enablement at 3Pillar Global. And we'll be talking about how Brian and his organization use a solution called DealCoachPro to increase win rates. That was hard to say, increase win rates and elevate performance. Welcome, Brian.
Nancy, it's a pleasure to see you. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure is all mine. And I do want to tell folks that you have quite an interesting background. We've talked before about it, but I did just grab some things at LinkedIn, and I know that you've been in this business for a long time. You've got a fascinating background. You were the VP of Sales Enablement at Miller Hyman, which I'm sure everyone knows of. You were in charge of sales effectiveness at Kaiser Permanente and the VP of North American Sales at Sirius XM. I just named a few that I thought were fascinating. Anything you want to add to that, even though I know I'm not doing it justice?
No, you make me feel older than I am. Yes, I've had such.
I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. Fabulous experience working for some of the leading industries, this leading industry sector giants for years. Very lucky, very blessed. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be great to talk to you today and learn from your experiences. And I think it might be helpful just to start by giving us a snapshot of 3Pillar Global. There may be some folks who aren't familiar with the company. So tell us a little bit about what does 3Pillar Global do?
Oh, sure. Thanks for asking. So 3Pillar Global, we're a premier digital product development partner, and we work with leading clients across media, information services, technology, and retail sectors.
Okay. And I know that that means that you've got what you do is you apply talent, right? So you're not selling a hard, solution or a product that you actually manufacture. Is that right?
So here's what we do. We build digital products for our clients, and these digital products touch our clients' clients. So as an example, if you are streaming on PBS and happen to be watching Downtown Abbey, you're on one of our products, you're experiencing our products. If you're at the Fortune.com website and you're streaming any of their content, looking at any of their thought leadership, you are actually experiencing one of our products. Or if you ever went to Carfax to see what your car was worth, to see what the background information on your vehicle in terms of accidents and repairs, you're using one of our products. So those are examples of some of our great clients and the products that we build for them.
That's fascinating. You had me at Downtown Abbey. Oh yeah, I love that show.
It's a crowd favorite, yes.
Yes, I'm sure it is. So I also like Carfax as well and some of the other things you mentioned. But what I want to get into is why DealCoachPro? Why did you look to, implement that solution? What were some of the challenges you were wanting to solve? I know one of the things that you and I had talked about was that you were looking to move towards solution selling.
So just by the nature of the business we're in, we're actually in the solution business, right? We engage with our clients, really understand what are the business problems that they're trying to solve, what their organization is trying to accomplish, and how a digital product solution that we can bring to market will help close that gap. So I think our story is not that much different than many organizations where we're looking at pipeline and looking at pipeline velocity and really trying to understand how can we get better intelligence around the health of deals. Where do we double down on the opportunities that have the right signals to them, and then how do we back away or walk away from opportunities that we may have had a subjective point of view in Salesforce by a seller, but when we really lean into the opportunity and use some leading science and in this case the DealCoachPro platform, it tells a little different story. So our goal is really to get a clear technology-driven view of pipeline to figure out the health of our deals. Figure out what our next best steps should be on those deals that have the signals that we can bring them to close, and know when to walk away from opportunities that have been sitting in pipeline stagnant for a period of time.
Okay. So you said a lot there because you
Yeah.
mentioned a technical approach to reviewing the pipeline, and everybody's sales organization has pipeline reviews, and they typically are very subjective. You have a conversation, you go down the list, and you have the rep tell you about it, talk to you about it. So, what does Deal Coach Pro do that changes that approach?
Perfect. So an old colleague of mine once said, Salesforce has never helped me close a deal. Right. And Salesforce and what it was built for is fabulous, and it houses all of the detail around accounts and contacts and opportunities. But what it really doesn't, it was never built to do, is to measure the health of an opportunity, right? Be able to identify the gaps or identify strengths and really guide a seller or a sales leader into what to do next. So, and I think the average opportunity or deal review in most companies is, let's take a look at your pipeline and what can you tell me about it, right? So it's a tool that was never designed to drive deals with a subjective perspective, typically from the seller, on reading back their notes that they put into a tool. It was never designed to drive pipeline velocity. So in really understanding how could we begin to pressure test deals a little differently, is what moved us in the direction of starting to investigate, or what are the different technology options out there that we should add into our tech stack. And that's when I met the team over at DealCoachPro.
Mm-hmm. And how does Deal Coach Pro help you to standardize on how to identify the signals, right? Because as reps, we have happy ears. We just listen for what signals we want to hear often. I don't want to paint everyone into a corner, but I was a rep, so I think it's fair to say that. We look for our own signals, but how has the solution helped you kind of standardize on the signals to look for?
Great. So it solves two problems. And let me start with the signals first. There's lots of technology, and I love your backdrop of all these fabulous different technology platforms that help us for engaging and who we should buy from. And I'm reading all of them now, and I read it all the time because there seems to be more of them that jump up every day. I think one of the core questions to answer is, are we talking to the right people, and are we asking the right questions of those right people? And those right people are, do we have a line of sight as to who the decision maker is, as well as the different buying influences that surround that key decision maker? And how do we accurately assess, do we know across each of those buyers, are they advocates of what we are recommending to them? Do we have access to them? Is this a priority to them? These are some of the answers that the tool helps push you to answer, and then pressure test your answers back against a bit of a heat map, kind of an assessment of your current deal stage. So again, if we just think back to Salesforce for a second, right? Opportunity and contacts, great. We can look at velocity of activity with contacts, but are they the right contacts? And I think that's one of the things that I found most effective about the tool is asking good questions around the core buyers on an opportunity. I think the second part of it is Gartner just in 2020, we're now in 2021. Gartner in 2020 released one of their latest studies around high performing sales managers. And high performing sales managers, and it's probably no shock to anyone watching this, right? They spend their time in early deal pursuit, right? They're there on the ground with their sellers, formulating a strategy, really looking at how to map out that opportunity, and giving kind of one-to-one coaching for sellers on what to do next. Unfortunately, that's only a small section of sales leaders or sales managers. And the majority of sales managers in the study are spending their time on all the things that really don't drive deals, administrative stuff, right? A lot of the outside stuff, more stuff for finance, right? All of the things that are pretty far disconnected or very disconnected away from deal pursuit. So the tool, I think the two quick benefits that we saw is, number one, it guides us to have the right conversation with the right buyers. And then when that sales leader is off doing tasks or activities or other priorities that are not focused on deal pursuit, the tool in and of itself helps sellers kind of guide themselves. It's the self-coaching tool, which is so magical about it, that sellers can go in and identify their next best step. And they can collaborate in and through the tool with their sales leaders or with other people in the organization. But I found that it was one of those, it's like having your own private swing coach if you're a golfer, always at the ready, right? I got to be able to stick that 7-iron, hit a button, and get some great tips on how to hold the club. So those were the two key attributes that I saw immediately out of DealCoachPro that could shape or change the way that our sellers were acting and the way deals were being coached.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you saying is that, not to put words in your mouth, but that sales leaders will now have a way to coach in a scalable way. And that even if they don't do it all the time, like some of these deal pursuit managers are able to do, and that the salesperson themselves will have a standardized way of taking them through the questions that they need to answer in order to know that they're really reading the deal in the right way. But I wanted to ask you about the question part, because one of the questions you mentioned was, are we talking to the right people? Well, how will you know? How does the solution help you know that? Because the rep may say, yes, we're talking to the right person. So are there some guardrails that everyone can know that they're answering the question in the way that it needs to be answered?
Oh, that's a great question. So out of the box, the solution has a framework of questions that can help any sales leader, any sales organization immediately turn it on and begin to coach. Depending on the type of sales pursuit, perhaps your industry engages in, if it happens to be different or a one-off. As a sales leader, you can actually go in and even customize the questions too. So that's what makes the tool so very effective. But back to your question, yes, it pressure tests whether you are working with the decision maker or a decision influencer, and that decision maker and or the influencer, they have prioritized your solution as being one that they will advocate for. So it checks off a couple of different axes against the buyers, but it quickly gives you a visual on how you stand in the deal. One other point I would make is you mentioned it brings a more objective approach to deal pursuit, which it absolutely does. But now think of your organization has different sales leaders over different sales teams. It also brings a level of objectivity across your sales leaders in an organization. So think of different divisions now have a more consistent way of reporting up through the organization about the health of deals. So it really it's quite scalable and flexible. At least we found it, and kind of checks those boxes for helping us get better clarity around pipeline health.
I like the term pressure test, because that's
Right.
really what we're doing as a sales rep or a manager, is just sort of pressure testing the reality of a certain opportunity against factors, and to be able to standardize those factors, I think, are important. Now, when you put some questions into the system, I imagine that there was a little bit of work involved in figuring out what are those right questions that you should be asking. Did the mere exercise of that help the organization in some way?
Well, it was actually easier than I thought it was going to be, because when we went through the demonstration and they shared that you could customize the questions, I began thinking, okay, so what question should we be asking? And and really adding a lot of probably burned too many calories thinking about it, because when we actually got into the tool and looked at the scheming of the questions were really, really spot on. In fact, that they're built off of a number of kind of proven sales methodologies that drive for complex selling. So most of the work was actually done You could fine tune some of the questions if necessary, but the questions right out of the box are a home run. And actually, as a sales leader or as an enablement leader, you can even change the weighting of the questions depending on the methodology that you're using, or something that wants to accentuate one part of your sales process over another. So it gives you some nice tooling within the platform to customize how you assess deals.
Let's talk about the rep's reaction to instituting a tool like this, right? Because it's no longer them saying, hey, trust me, right? Or, yeah, I know I've got this. What were the sort of mental stages of the reps coming to accept that there's a new approach?
Well, just like you said earlier, we're all sellers, right? So our first, I think, natural inclination is, what is this? And this is going to be hard. This is something new you're asking me to do. The evidence is in, if it helps a seller have different clarity around next steps, really to move an opportunity ahead, right? That would be, to me, one of those quick litmus tests of, is the piece of technology valuable? So yeah, I think we experience no different than anyone else, which is, it's new. Why are we doing this? And where we found the aha moment was being able to break through with a different level of clarity, even on deals that had some of those happy years that you talked about before. And when pressure testing and coming up with next best steps, most of it was around validating of input from the seller. And it was, go back, bring back evidence, and we'll talk about it in the next one-on-one. And really what the tool kept pointing to was a different outcome for the deal. And when the seller runs out of inputs around why they're justifying the opportunity where it is, and they're staring at this visualization tool that they answered questions and it self-populated, it begins to kind of shape the mindset, which is, maybe that deal isn't as healthy. I really can't answer or overcome this fairly low rating that the tool is telling me is going to be a barrier for me to moving forward with this opportunity. So the great news is, it's not a tool to use as, it's not a disciplinary tool. It's not a performance management tool. It's a coaching tool, right? It's helping build new muscles in changing a mindset about how you approach opportunity pursuit and opportunity management. So I would say that it was the healthy skeptic in the beginning. Why should we do this? Why should we have it? And then once we started seeing some kind of breakthroughs with some members of the sales team, that's when you get adoption, that's a bit wider. So, Yep.
Yeah, you made me think of a couple of things. One is that, there's this notion of wanting to win fast and lose fast as well.
Win fast, lose fast. That's right.
So I guess the problem is that when deals start getting pushed and pushed and pushed, it's hard to let go of them. So does this evidence-based coaching help a sales rep to understand, what they should be doing with those deals, if it's time to let go, or what the next actions maybe should be?
Well, I think that is that's the outcome. I think what this helps to do is shape a perspective of sales leaders, which is an accurate, healthy pipeline is better than a big pipeline, right? And are we managing opportunities that fit within, they're chasing our total addressable market. We've got an opportunity and an advantage. We kind of understand the space, and we've got good sound rigor in terms of how we create and chase opportunities. This tool helps with that, right? It clears a bit of the junk out. So in shaping a sales organization's perspective of what is a healthy deal, I think that's one of the byproducts of just using the tool and really thinking about, do I really have good answers to these questions, knowing that I'm going to have to answer them in the tool, right? So we begin to shape and build new muscles into the early opportunity steps that sellers take. The win fast, lose fast. Yeah, we want to focus our attention on opportunities that we can drive, right? And dead deals because we have an emotional attachment to them. That doesn't help the organization out, and certainly doesn't bring focus back to the seller and their sales leader on what we should be doing to really drive revenue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to ask you about tools in general, sales tools in general that you want to bring to your organization to, to help them be more effective. DealCoachPro is just one solution that you can pick from, obviously. So if someone was building their sales tech stack, at what point do you recommend they bring in something like a DealCoachPro versus some of the other tools?
Yeah. So I probably went against probably most people's thinking, which is we brought it in first because rather than bringing it in last, and I'll share a little bit behind that, and that is the first step was let's pressure test what we have. Can we benchmark the current state of our opportunity management? And the tool allowed us to just start sifting through deals that either opportunities that sat in there for 4 or 5, 6 months past when our average deals would come to close, either close won or close lost. So those persistent deals that just kind of hang out there, those deals that you have close dates that keep shifting around, right? Those wiry deals, they follow year to year, month to month, quarter to quarter. So we brought that in first to really start framing. Again, our mindset is what I've used that phrase a couple of times, but really framing our mindset of how we should think about our current pipeline and become more objective. And that we, in terms of the other tools, I think you probably know better than most, but I think the last number was your average sales organization was up to 14 or 15 different tools behind you on your backdrop. Maybe it's more than that now. Wow. That's a lot. I think the approach that we took was, well, let's look at the ones that are going to solve a business problem for us today in how we sell. So we were fairly focused on let's try to close specific gaps in our sales process or our sales motions, rather than just go out to the board and pick one of everything and try and go end to end. Because we're dealing with adoption, all of these have different dashboards. We really wanted to focus on where we needed to get the greatest lift in our new sales pursuit. But DealCoachPro is an important piece. It's still that anchor that we can point back to, even early stage, to say, are we heading in the right direction?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that lift that you mentioned.
Yeah.
How do you measure success? How do you know that it's working and that it is providing, a difference in terms of, win rates and velocity?
Great. So there's both quantitative and qualitative answers to that. Certainly, I'm going to give you the view from a sales leader for a second. When I heard different intentional actions being brought into one-on-ones when we were doing deal reviews, right? Listening to a change in language and a change of intent with our sellers was a big signal that we were starting to influence how we were thinking about opportunity pursuit. And these became unaided at one point. We actually had sellers coming into deal reviews where they opened up the tool and they carried us through the narrative. Here's my current state. This is what I've identified as being a gap in this pursuit. And here's the way I'm thinking about it. And this is the particular buyer that I'm challenged with. And when we started hearing signals like that, we knew we were changing the arc of sellers and how they were thinking about opportunity pursuit. I think the easy measurements are we getting to that win fast, lose fast, faster? That's correct, right? Let's get rid of the deals that we just don't have a path to contract, and the tool is flaring off some signals. How are we in terms of opportunity velocity? Do we have intentional next steps that we can see deals that are moving through our pipeline at a better pace? And then finally, are we hitting our close dates without seeing those dates kind of shifting around, or reduction of shifting right, as we call it, with close dates? And of the deals that we were coaching initially with the tool, we saw those close dates moving all over, and those were starting to solidify down. So again, one of the signals around better deals, better strategy and better clarity in terms of those next steps that would directionally take us for a more accurate closing date. Those were all signals that we see. Mhm.
Fantastic. Well, you've shared so much great information with us today. Again, I've been talking with the VP of Commercial Enablement, Brian Shea of 3Pillar Global. Brian, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to share with our audience what's helping you and your organization be successful.
Well, Nancy, thank you for the time, and thank you for all of the work that you do for our industry. So we as enablement professionals appreciate the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Thanks again, Brian.
Bye.